Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my most likely national championship contenders. Last time I made a video like this, it was for every Power Six conference. This one is just like who's the most likely. So let's get straight into it. Number one, we got Texas. Texas is already, we all know, a solid team, but what makes them like the number one candidate for me is the lightness of schedule. They have the easiest schedule, and their only competitor really is Oklahoma. That's it. And they get that game at home. So it's like Texas doesn't really have a whole lot of competition. You could say Kansas. You could say at TCU, maybe Kansas State, but to be honest, Texas is so much stronger than every team in their conference. Even right now, Oklahoma doesn't look like that much of a competitor after struggling with Cincinnati. So I think Texas definitely stands the strongest chance. But then with me saying that Oklahoma doesn't stand that strong of a chance, I've got them at number two because their schedule is very light. Their schedule is very light. And the only way Oklahoma would be kicked out, really, in my eyes, is if they lose to Texas twice. If Oklahoma loses to Texas in the regular season, they can still win out very easily and go to the Big 12 championship and then beat Texas, and then they'll both be one-loss teams. That's how that would work, with most likely Oklahoma stealing Texas's spot, or somehow they both get in. I don't know. That's how that would operate. However, Oklahoma, the reason why I have them under Texas is because, one, I just think Texas is the better team, and two, Oklahoma has to play on the road at Kansas. That's a big difference as well. As Texas gets Kansas, they host them this week. Oklahoma later on in the season has to play at Kansas. I think Kansas is a pretty good team, but the difference in home field is definitely a major part. Kansas fans will be looking forward to that game because, like, you can count on Texas beating Kansas at Texas. You can count on it. I think it'll be a relatively close game, but I think Texas will win that game. But on Oklahoma on the road at Kansas, that could be a little interesting. So that also gets put into the equation. But the mainest of reasons is for these teams is lightness of schedules. Oklahoma falls under Texas because I just think Texas is a stronger team and could very well beat this team twice. Number three, we've got Alabama. Yup. These might be some hot takes. I'm not too sure. But Alabama loses at home in Texas, or at home to Texas, 34-24, which kind of already was like a big start to the season. But Alabama bounced back this most recent win with a good win over Ole Miss. Personally, I said that Ole Miss, if they win that, Ole Miss is the best team in the SEC. They stand the strongest chance at the SEC championship and a college football playoff spot. But Alabama wins it. The thing about Alabama right now is their lightness of schedule. However, theirs is not even close to the same level as even Oklahoma. It's such a gap from 2 to 3 because they still have to play Tennessee, they still have to play LSU, and they have to play games like at A&M, at Auburn. Like, they've still got some tough games on their schedule. The thing about Texas and Oklahoma is they've only got like 2 tough games. That's it. Like, don't LSU on the road at Bama. I doubt that'll be a win in LSU's favor. Tennessee on the road at Bama, I doubt it'll be a win. But I look more at the A&M game. I couldn't even vote in Mississippi State's favor. Maybe even at Kentucky could be a tough one. And at Auburn is always a tough game for them. So Alabama, I think they have a very solid team. Jalen Milroe is definitely a solid quarterback. So Alabama right now, they're ranked teams, and the tough teams they get to host, and quite frankly, I just don't think they could beat them in general. The ranked teams that Alabama could face, I don't think they could beat Alabama in general. So it's just more of the toughness of schedule. Teams like A&M and Auburn could pose threats, maybe even the ranked teams. They've just got a stronger schedule, as well as they've also got the SEC championship, which could be against like Georgia or somebody. That could always be very tough. Number 4, I got FSU. This one was really difficult to put here But I feel like I've kind of got to put him here after they've proved themselves twice. The reason why FSU was really a difficult team to put in the national championship conversation was because they had LSU and at Clemson on their schedule. And then they even have to play games like at Florida and stuff, which made this in the preseason very difficult team to put on there. But they win the two games that a lot of people didn't think they were going to win. But now they have to look to the future. But this is where things get good for Florida State. They get to play at home against Duke, and they get to play at home against Miami. Those are two massive home field advantages. The toughest game of the year, which happens to be a non-conference game for Florida State, is at Florida. That would be the toughest game right now. To be honest, I don't think Florida should be ranked, but they are, and that would be, I'd say, their strongest chance at losing. Now, I think Miami is a very, very good team, but that's a major rivalry, and you best believe the home field makes a big difference there. So I think Florida State struck gold there at Florida State against Duke. Duke, I feel like they are they're heavily reliant on their home field. If they were at Clemson, I don't think Duke's winning that game. Like, Duke's home field right now is definitely it's like a different area right now. It's unnatural. You go play at Duke, it's a scary game. And that I could back myself up by Notre Dame having to play there. We'll see what happens there. But right now, Florida State, I'd say their strongest competition would have to be between Florida and Miami. I mean, Florida could absolutely flop and look like horse shit. I mean, they already do kind of look like shit, but they have that stupid win against Tennessee. But if Florida just falls apart, I think Florida State will win. Then their strongest competition lies within Miami, and then pretty much whoever they will play in the ACC championship, which would probably be North Carolina, if we're being honest. However, North Carolina has to play at Clemson this year, so it could still very well be a team like Duke or something. But Florida State definitely holds this spot. They've proved themselves with LSU and with Clemson. It's just you can't not. Penn State. Now, this was way more difficult than Florida State, because the thing about the Big Ten right now is Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, they all have to play each other, and it's like not one team gets both teams at a home field or something like that. One of them, every team has to play one of the teams on the road and one of the teams at home. That's how it works. But I think Penn State won the good part of it. Penn State has to go play on the road at Ohio State, but they host Michigan. I think that was the W. Ohio State with the win against Notre Dame, they definitely jumped up, but I still think they have to host Penn State, which just doesn't look very likely to me. And they're at Michigan. As well as I even like to throw in the little details, I know Purdue is not a good team this year, but Ohio State at Purdue, there's so much history of Ohio State at Purdue, man. That is one of the toughest places for Ohio State to play is at Purdue. You can count on it. They do get to host Maryland and stuff. They're on the road at Wisconsin, but we don't really think Wisconsin's that good anymore. I don't think Ohio State. I think they sit in a solid third place of the teams. No, Michigan has a very light schedule up until their final three games. They have to play at Penn State. I think the Michigan at Penn State, I'm going to say it's a solid guaranteed loss for Michigan. And then Michigan has to play at Maryland. That could be a very close and maybe even go in Maryland's favor. But then they get to host Ohio State, which should be a win for Michigan. I mean, of course, that game is always very difficult. So I'd say Michigan comes in a solid second place. And then in first place, I've got Penn State. They just waxed Iowa. They look like a really good team overall. Yes, they have to play at Maryland, but last year they dropped it was 30-0 or 40-0 or something. Penn State definitely can take care of business at Maryland. And if they beat Ohio State on the road, which I'd say could be a little bit more likely than people expect, then Penn State they stand the strongest chance. I mean, that's the big key game right there is can Penn State win against Ohio State? And it doesn't really come down to that for Ohio State and Michigan for me. There's other components. Penn State, to me, just looks like if they can win at Ohio State, I think they've got it. So that's why they claim the spot. It was also very difficult, of course, with this team being my last place spot. It was very difficult for me to put a Pac-12 team into this Natty race. But overall, I mean, with all the ranked teams in the Pac-12, I'd say a Pac-12 team with 2 losses could very well make it this year. But of all the teams that would do that, I would definitely say it'd be Washington. Because Washington gets to host Oregon, they get to host Utah, and they get to host Washington State. Those are 3 major home games. Yes, they are on the road at USC, and they're on the road at Oregon State. On the road at USC, though, was probably the best possible game they could have gotten on the road. Sorry for the mic noise. That was probably the best road game they could have gotten because USC, their defense is just absent. Washington will have a field day on their defense, and honestly, the USC home field, I just don't think it's strong enough to stop Washington. Washington's offense is way too high-powered, and some would argue that Washington's defense isn't that good because Cal dropped 32 on him, but still, I mean, if you look back at the Cal game, yes, just kick me out of what I was looking at, ESPN. Thank you so much. Give me 1 second while I pull it back up. Oh, my God. All right. If you look at the game, a lot of people would say, well, Washington's defense isn't that good because Cal dropped 32. Washington had 52 points while Cal had 19. So it was mainly just, I think it was just the backups in that allowed Cal to score because Cal still had their main people in for a while, like Jaden Ott and whatnot. So, Jaden Ott, whatnot, ha ha ha. But I think Washington's defense is stronger and able to stop USC's offense. I mean, hey, USC only put up 42 against ASU and allowed 28. Honestly, I was expecting ASU, and somewhere in my brain I was expecting ASU to score points. I was expecting USC to score more points. And when ASU scored a lot of points and USC didn't score a whole bunch, I mean, 42 is still a lot, but with their offense, it's not a lot. I was a little shaken up. I don't think USC, I'm right back to where I was a couple weeks ago. I don't think USC is that good. Caleb Williams is a good quarterback, but I just don't think they're that good. Washington also has to play on the road at Oregon State, which was looking like a great game, but DJ, he just can't. He proved to the nation that he can't provide the quarterback stats that they needed to win that Washington State game. They were down 35-14. Final score is way closer than the game actually was. So Oregon State is pretty much in the same spot they were last year, and in a much more competitive Pac-12. It's sad to say I've lost my Oregon State hype. I've lost it. It's gone. So Washington struck gold with the home and road games. That's why they sit at number 1. And overall, I just think they're the best team in the Pac-12. And that's the last team on this list. I only put up a certain few up here because I say the most likely there's going to be a whole lot of 2-loss teams this year. There's probably going to be, I'd say, I don't even think there's going to be an undefeated team. I think there will be, if anything, the undefeated team will be Texas, which still they could lose to Oklahoma and stuff or slip up in the season somehow. I mean, college football is unpredictable, but the rest, there could be a 2-loss team entering in, which would most likely be a Pac-12 team, depending on the situations that happen. I believe that Pac-12 would be granted a 2-loss team, especially since it's their final year and we know they're just the most competitive and strongest conference right now. There will probably be a 2-loss team in. But with that being said, that is my most likely national championship competitors right now. Who's most likely to make it? I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe would help. Comment always helps, and that's all for me. Adios.